Man, you think if this go live, it would take you to this. Howdy, folks. I'm Keith Bowen. This is Hard Rock University and the usual crap. You want to get the light in the kitchen there, Tommy?
It's already on.
It is?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's
That light there, huh? You want to turn that other light on and turn this one off? That might help a little. Let's see what happens. Working on the usual. That's a little better. Not too bad. Okay.
Hi, everybody.
still ugly.
So, let's
Don't be
see.
quiet, Parrish.
We got Chris is here.
We got Chris and David and Corey and
There we go. Yeah, Corey, David, and Chris so
and
far.
Corey got his first 1.1 carat tanzanite.
Wow, sweet. Is it a good quality
And
one?
Timothy's here.
Hi, Timothy. Okay, let's see. Little bookkeeping stuff here, or accounting, while we get started. Hi, Jacob. Let's see. Chris, your box is on the way, supposed to be there Tuesday. And Carson sent me a camcorder for free. I mean, this was really, really nice. Carson from carson.com YouTube channel. Let's see all the good stuff in here. First of all, a Sony camcorder. Brand new. Thank you. Now maybe I can eliminate that dirt on the inside of the lens issue. And a bag. These are apparently like some kind of packing devices that can Velcro in the bag to make it pack a little more snugly, I guess. Never seen anything like that before, but got a memory chip. A lens band.
Chris says, wow, you're going to be wired for sound. And Vandalism Life has chimed in and says, hello, new to the area. Wifey loves rocks and me, and I am all about the gold.
No.
And Chris says those are standard camera bag dividers.
Yep. And
Vandalism is from Florida.
we have a lens band. I'm not exactly sure what a lens band does, but I've got one now. Cleaning kit. And this is cool. A chip wallet. So I can keep my stuff organized. That would be unique. I'm not sure how to organize. And this is a...
Chris Giorgi says that lens strap is to keep your lens cap from running away.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. And this is either the battery or an extra battery. Not sure, but there's a battery there. And an LCD lens cleaner. Here's the actual strap and mount and stuff for the camera. And a little teeny tabletop tripod. That could come in handy at times. So the nice thing is it's so small it'll fit in the kit with everything else. This, I presume, is a strap for the camera bag itself.
Chris says, nice kit.
Yeah.
And we have Havi Good here from Somaliland, Hargeisa. He says, you're a great teacher. I graduate Hard Rock University. I have sources in our family farm. It's porphyry ore deposits. And I gave him your email.
Okay. Yeah, I get a number of queries from Africa from time to time. And hopefully in the not too distant future, I may be able to go over there and actually start doing some stuff for some people. We shall see what happens. But that would be rather unique and interesting. I'll have to do a lot of research before I head off into another continent that I'm unfamiliar with, though.
Chris says we need to figure out how to attach a macro lens / microscope eyepiece to that camera.
Possibly.
Any ideas, Chris?
I know I've got an electronic microscope I could theoretically plug in. The resolution is rather poor. Ugh. But anyhow, I am very, very thankful. Thank you, Carson, at CarsonCom YouTube channel. It's going to take me a little bit to read the instructions and get it all set up and everything.
Chris asks, what's the thread diameter for the lens?
I haven't the faintest idea, Chris. Email me and we'll see what the deal is. I don't have anything to measure with handy right now.
And he says, yes, thank you, Carson.
Yep. So as I'll have to look, I think it's got HD capability or something too. Although, again, I'm going to have to relearn everything. Hurting electrons is not my forte in the slightest. So it's going to be a little bit challenging, but I'm sure I can manage it. It's usually printed right on the front. Well, okay. Let's see. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Here's a camera in a box. Open the box. Way too much paperwork, but presumably I can set it up so I don't have to think. And there's a charger. And I presume the USB cable.
At least it comes with paper manuals.
Looks like a memory stick or something. Okay, now that battery must be the battery because there's no battery in here.
The manual should tell you the information.
Well, let's see. Looks very similar in many ways to the one I have, which is good. Again, I'll have to figure out all the nuances and details. And let's see.
Vandalism has a question for you here.
What?
Where is a good place to get rock hounding south of Tucson? Is it safe? Sorry, we're new to the area, and it sounds like a great spot.
Okay, just a second here. In terms of the lens, there one says 1.8/1.9-57. If that helps you, Chris. It's a Zeiss. Good manufacturer. So that may give you the information you are looking for, Chris. Put that away before I lose something else. Rock hounding south of Tucson.
I'm looking it up right now, Bear, but if you know any.
Well, there's various things. It depends on what kind of rock you're looking for in general. There's a lot of limestone in the area, so there's caving and things like that. There's a lot of mineralization all over the place in old mines and such. You can look up the records on various ones and see which have specimen stuff, etc. In terms of safety, as a general rule, anything south of Interstate 10 is going to have a lot more smuggling traffic than north of it because they're trying to get to I-10. So if it's north of I-10, it's a lot safer. South of I-10, I can't give you any specific details. I know there's places the Border Patrol used to not like going. So I would see, I'd check with some of the agents in the field if you're going out there. I mean, if you're headed south on I-19, you're going to go through a border checkpoint. If you go out the Arivaca Road, there's a border checkpoint. If you go south on 83, there's a border checkpoint. If you can ask those or just call in, perhaps, I don't know what they're allowed to say, but the Border Patrol knows what's generally safe, what isn't.
Stafford, Arizona is good for fire agate.
Okay. As a general rule in terms of safety, the smugglers are not out there trying to attack Americans. They're just trying to get a job done. And so they will generally avoid contact if you avoid contact. If you see anyone suspicious, just stay away from them. They will usually leave you alone. You're more likely to run into an actual immigrant, and I'll use the term to differentiate from the smugglers themselves. Somebody who's trying to get across illegally generally is not a dangerous person, but they may be in serious distress. In the Tucson sector, I believe they lose about 200 migrants a year to elements and misadventure and stuff. So you may see somebody who's in distress. If you render aid to an immigrant, as soon as they get in your car, you're a smuggler unless proven otherwise. So if there's, a threat to life or whatever, as soon as you can get reception, dial 911, let people know I've got somebody that's in distress. They need to get to a hospital. I'm taking them to the hospital. Have Border Patrol or police meet me or whatever. But get that information to the authorities before they find you or you are now a smuggler. But certainly if somebody's life is in danger, you're not going to let them die just to avoid anything like that. But if you render aid, like give them water, food, a blanket, anything like that, you need to report that. Otherwise, you are assisting immigrants. So just be aware of that. Border Patrol rescues a lot of immigrants every year because once the smugglers have their money, they don't really care if you live or die. There's some real barbarian is a kind word for some of these smugglers. They have rape trees where they just hang the underwear of the women they've raped. There was an incident near Yuma, I don't know, 1 or 2 decades ago, south of Interstate 8 in Arizona. It goes from Yuma to Gila Bend to Casa Grande. And at Gila Bend, there's a road goes south to Ajo. Now, between about 30 miles east of Yuma to that Ajo road on the south side of Interstate 8, there's essentially nothing. There's the Barry Goldwater bombing range and the Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge. And I'd say about 20 years ago, just south of the border I think it's Mexico Highway 1. I've driven it many times, but it's only like 100, 200 yards south of the border in many places and parallels it. So several vans pull up and offload a bunch of people and hand them a jug of water and say, head north. In a couple miles, you'll hit the freeway, hitch a ride, get to Los Angeles, and get a job and be rich, send money home. Well, it was the middle of summer. And at the particular point that they dropped those people off, it wasn't 3 miles to the freeway. It wasn't 30 miles to the freeway. It was 70 miles to the freeway. Now, it is physically impossible for a human being to carry enough water, or actually the average human being. There may be some Navy SEALs that could do it, but the average human being cannot physically carry enough water to make that trip in the summertime. And the first authorities knew anything about it, somebody who was flying a helicopter, I don't know if it was military, Border Patrol, Fish and Game, whatever, but some official type people were flying a helicopter in the area. And there was a couple guys on the ground waving their arms, trying to get their attention. So, of course, they land. And they're like, oh, my God, thank you. We're dying. The heat. We don't have any water. And I said, well, get in. We'll, get you to the base and get you taken care of. And they said, well, you got to help our friends. I said, your friends? I said, yeah, we're with a bunch of other. He said, well, how many people are there out here? And I said, we don't know, 40, 50 people. Well, it was actually, I think, somewhere around 46, 48 people or whatever.
Blindside points out you should be careful to call the police first, as you never know if someone takes advantage by trying to steal your car.
Yeah.
Or toss them water and make room.
Yeah. It's your conscience you're going to have to live with one way or another, but exercise caution first.
I recommended 2 rock hounding areas for him over by Safford on the New Mexico border for fire agate, because that is not a smuggling route.
Okay, now can I finish the story?
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, so they immediately instituted an emergency search and rescue operation. There were hundreds of people. I think it was about 250 searchers were mobilized as fast as they could get them in the field. And 13 migrants still died before they located everybody and hauled the survivors to medical assistance. So the Border Patrol saves a lot of lives a year down here. And the cartels and the smugglers are just brutal. They rob, they rape, they don't care. They don't treat the migrants as well as a farmer treats his livestock, because a farmer, the livestock is the future. These people, it's one time, get them through. People don't realize it, but like Phoenix years ago was like the #2 city on the planet for kidnapping. And that was because the smugglers were holding migrants hostage. I mean, they'd get them in the United States and then call up their families or whatever and say, well, we got them here, but we can't turn them loose till we get an extra $4,000 or whatever. I say, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Chris says, it looks like that camera doesn't accept threaded filters or hoods. I got the model number and such for him.
Okay, that sounds plausible.
It is still a nice camera.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice basic camera. It's not it doesn't look like it's a top of the line fancy thing, but that's good because I'm not top of the line fancy photographer. I need something really basic. I can essentially set it and forget it, and it does everything automatically.
Why don't you tell them what you were up to today with the gold?
I have a video already edited. I didn't have time. I mean, last 24 hours, geez. I was working till a little after midnight selling at a special event, corn maze thing. Got done with that, headed home about 1 o'clock in the morning. Tire comes apart, no jack in the vehicle. By the time I got home, it was after 2 in the morning, and then I had some construction to help out today. So I've only had about 5 hours sleep. But anyhow, I did do a little panning. And this is what I call super concentrates. I get concentrates out of the concentrator and I pan them down till I'm getting pretty close to the gold. I'm seeing gold and everything, and then I just set it to the side because I don't want to lose any gold. So these were super concentrates, and that is probably running about 50% by weight gold. That's just my visual estimate. It's not super clean. Again, I don't want to lose the gold. Now, both of these are going to be furnace down. Okay, so it's not really critical. I could have just left it as super concentrates, and in the long run probably will, but I'm trying to improve my ability to clean up the gold, and I get more practice you know, by trying stuff like this, but it did it in such a way that I'm not losing anything. So say this is what was basically the tailings. And that's the gold cons, and I'm guessing there's about 3 grams of gold in there. There's about 6.5 grams total, and my guess is 20% by volume gold, 50% by weight gold. So that's what I was doing today.
Yeah, Chris said it looks like about 3 grams.
3 grams of gold, Chris. That's 6.5 grams of actual material. And so, judging by the coloration, let's see, where's my light? There it is. I don't know if you can, wow, that's awfully well lit. And yeah, good luck.
A gray
There.
gold color, Chris says.
Yeah, see that kind of yellow tint to it? My eyeball tells me that's running 35 to 50% gold by weight. When you get this fine a gold and you're actually able to see a yellow color, that's what I'm expecting. But again, Ryan, this is all from Ryan's ore.
Blindside says, nice.
And Ryan he's got a furnace. I don't have a furnace yet, working on it, but he's got a furnace, so he'll smelt it all down and give me an exact number. But as I have a little video on that, I'll be uploading. It's sorry not doing much more in the way of videos, but I'm trying to fix cars, make money, etc. October's a busy time because we got the corn thing going here where the and that runs till midnight and stuff. So I'm alternating schedules between being up at 4 in the morning and staying up till 2 in the morning. So it gets a little bit demanding on an old geezer like me from time to time. Hopefully in a couple weeks, I won't be making those radical shifts back and forth at least.
Chris asked, what sample size was that out of?
That's about 200 kilograms of ore. So what would that be? Fifth?
440 pounds.
Yeah, about 15 grams to the ton roughly recovered. Now there is a little bit from other stuff. There were some things laying around that I just reran, etc. But in terms of new ore, 200 kilograms of Ryan's ore. And his ore generally runs between 1/3 to 1/2 an ounce to the ton. This stuff, I have not assayed it yet. I'm doing like 100 kilogram test runs. The plan is each one will be separately assayed because they can vary from one batch to the next. 100 kilograms takes me about an hour to run, and as such, it's a reasonable size to do a test instead of a full-fledged, production day or whatever. Still playing games with the concentrator, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what I need to do to improve the recoveries.
Chris says it's looking pretty good for gravity, dude.
Yeah, it's doing fairly well. I'm recovering easily stuff in the 75 to 100 micron range. I'm getting a fair amount at the 35 micron and less range, but it's interesting. It behaves differently in the pan, and so they pan out a little bit differently at those two different sizes. So it makes it a little odd at times. And I'm also trying to rerun some slimes and see what happens there. And I was quite shocked because the slimes had a lot of fairly decent sized gold in it. 3 thousandths of an inch. What's that? About 100 microns. I believe that's in the neighborhood of about 250 mesh, if I'm not mistaken. 200, 250. And I didn't think I would have very much of that in the slimes, but I did. So not sure why. This
Lisa Harrelson asks, what location within 100 miles?
within 100 miles of Tucson. Gosh, up north of the Catalinas is pretty nice, up in the Oracle area. A lot of mineralization up there, the San Pedro River Valley. Trying to think if the Avra Valleys, I don't know much there. Once you get past the Avra Valley, now you're in the Tohono Reservation, so you want to stay away from that because, as I say, it's like a separate nation. You just want to, stay to your standard roads and this and that. It's not dangerous per se. It's just you're not allowed to pick up rocks or anything. You're not one of the tribe, and therefore you're not authorized. So you don't want to get any legal trouble by trespassing or taking mineral samples without permission and stuff
Chris
like that.
says it's catching a 200 mesh screen at least 15%. It looks like, and you need to get that under magnification and see what it looks like.
Well, I have put it under magnification. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I can tell what particle sizes there are. What I can't tell is what particle sizes got away from me, and that's It appears like this configuration I currently have may actually be losing a little bit more gold than the old one, although I'm not sure why. It shouldn't be. But there's a lot of parameters I still have to tweak, and I may just not have it dialed in yet. Within 100 miles, gosh, rock hounding isn't my usual thing, but I know north of the Catalinas there's a lot of mineralization. There also used to be a road. It may be closed now.
Anybody who wants to know about rock hounding in Arizona, should check out ArizonaRockHound.com. They also have they have a list of rock hounding clubs. Okay,
ArizonaRockHounding.com has a list of clubs and apparently information for things like that. Used to be a road up the backside of the Catalina Mountains that was a decent dirt road. I mean, it wasn't paved or anything, but it didn't require four-wheel drive in general. However, there has been a big fire up there, and I don't know what's accessible, what's not, what's closed for safety reasons. There's going to be just loads of dead trees. We had a fire burning up there for like 3 weeks.
Chris asked, what's the thickness of those particles that are reporting to slimes?
A lot of them were actually fairly round. That was the interesting thing, Chris. They weren't real flaky. This stuff seems to be more rounded particles. Not certain if that's because of the impact milling, kind of balling them up, or what. But it's not super flaky.
And Lisa Harrelson asks, would 200 mesh float away?
200 mesh can easily float away under certain circumstances, most especially if it's flaky. Dan Hurd has a video on floating gold where he's got, chunks of gold floating on the surface, but they're flakes. And so they have a lot of surface area to the to the weight, and they float quite easily. But he had a really nice demonstration. He's got them in the pan, in the bottom with the stuff, kind of pulls the water away from them and runs the water back, and they just boop, float right up. It was amazing. It's a very good demonstration, best I've seen. So yeah, Dan Hurd's channel, Dan Hurd on YouTube, and Floating Gold or something like that. It was about a year and a half ago, as I recall.
That would be HURD.
Yeah, HURD.
And Blindside says flower gold loves to float with water tension.
Yeah.
Chris says he might try to flatten it out and see what it looks like internally.
Oh boy, I don't know how you do that. That's pretty small to get between two surfaces. I suppose you could try and use a fairly smooth hammer and anvil sort of thing, but I hesitate to play with gold that's not even really mine. This is Ryan's gold. There's some other tests I would like to run too that I'll have to discuss with Ryan before I attempt them. but may have some interesting utility. We'll see what happens. But
Find out if anyone has any questions while I go get a drink.
okay. By pressure smear test, do you mean a streak test or something else? So would a blue bowl work with 200 mesh? If it's well classified, probably a blue bowl would do okay with 200 mesh. It's not going to have much throughput. I mean, a blue bowl just doesn't have a lot of throughput. My concentrator, I was running it at 300 pounds per hour this last test. And so, the losses may just be because I'm putting it through too fast. 2 lap surfaces. Okay. Yeah. And say that may be it, but a blue bowl itself, I don't know what the throughput is, but I would guess in the neighborhood of a few pounds per hour, maybe 5. I would doubt more than 10. It is not a production machine. It's more of a cleanup device, and if it's properly classified, it seems to work pretty well. And Chris is probably a pretty good expert on blue bowls because he knows the people that make them.
Small gold, as long as you get it to the bottom, and they're shape dependent, but they can get a very good cut.
Yeah.
Then he says, not even close.
I say I
try a pound per hour if you're doing it fast.
Okay, pound per hour. Yeah, I say so. That's not worthwhile if you're trying as a primary concentrator. As a cleanup, maybe, but even then, a pound per hour, I can probably pan it a lot faster than that and still get good recoveries. The concentrator right now, I'm getting, when I clean out the whole concentrator, I'm getting 5 to 10 pounds of total rough concentrates.
Old Med says, I took your advice about promoting the claim.
Okay.
And Idaho says, good evening to us.
Hi, Idaho Rogers. You still haven't managed to come by when you're running your truck around. I feel ignored. Yeah, Chris, 100 mesh cut. You know how fun it is to try and screen to 100 mesh. That is that is tough. I'm thinking I may need to come up with like a small trommel to try and get 200 pounds an hour throughput, but I suspect I'm going to need something almost as big as a barrel to run that much material through and screen it to a 100 mesh plus minus.
Idaho says, soon enough, sir, I promise.
All righty. Looking forward to it.
Blindside has a question for you there.
Uh-huh. What's your favorite state to prospect in and why? I have not done a lot of prospecting all over the place in the West here, mostly in Arizona because I live here. I've lived here for decades, basically all my life, except for a few years, a few other places. If I'm prospecting, I like someplace that doesn't have a lot of vegetation. And it could be, and even in Montana, it wasn't bad. There wasn't a lot of vegetation. You could see the bedrock. Now, Oregon, when we were up there near Roseville, man, the soil is 10 feet deep. So if you're looking for hard rock, you got to look pretty deep to get it. And that I don't like. We were in Northern California one time trying to find a mine. We never even found the darn thing. And we had the guy's son with us saying, it's right up there on this mountain somewhere. Say the vegetation, the landsliding, things like that, it just real rough. Out here in the more arid stuff, I mean, once you get east of the Sierras and Cascades, it's dry enough that you can see the geology a lot better, and that I much prefer if I'm prospecting, because then I get a much better idea what's going on beneath the surface.
And Alfredo Sagredo Romero asks, over on I-10 south by Sweet Creek River, there's a ridge. Is it there permissible to seek on the hills for gold? Is it res property?
I-10.
South by Sweet Creek. I-10 south by Sweet.
I'm not sure where Sweet Creek is. Sweet Creek River. Boy, that doesn't. Eva's going to look it up. In order to find out whether a particular location is open for mineral entry, first of all, you have to find out who owns the property. And is it private? Is it government? Is it state, U.S., military? Is it a wilderness area, national park, national monument? And the way you can determine where any particular spot is, who owns that, is go to the county assessor's office or the website. If you have a USGS topo map or whatever, it's going to have township, section, and range. And, usually like the assessor is by section, individual section, which is 1 square mile. But because they tax land, they have to know who owns everything. And in order to just go on out there and prospecting, it has to be U.S. government land open to mineral entry. So no wilderness areas, no national monuments, national parks, military reservations. State land, you have to have a permit first. You have to buy a permit just to prospect. And private land, of course, you have to have some kind of agreement with the landowner. Yeah, that's one of the advantages of prospecting clubs is they have a bunch of claims. And once you're a member of the club, you can go out on the claims. And they will have maps and descriptions and some idea what you can do, what's out at each claim and where to look.
Membership fees are generally very reasonable.
And the membership fees are quite modest. I think Desert Gold Diggers here was like $35 per person per year or something like that.
Once you verify it's not private, the next check is BLM land status records and master title plats.
Yeah. I found the county assessor's office here in Tucson, and they knew, that's BLM land right there. That's because BLM land is generally open to mineral entry unless it's withdrawn for some evaluation, like they're thinking of turning it into a wilderness area. Then it may be withdrawn. But BLM land is generally open. And what is this pulsator thing, Chris? I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about in terms of for screening. For the spin it off. The gold is an order of magnitude too small for the spin it off. Not sure what that means, Chris.
Yeah, they were asking if the spin it off would work for your black sands, but our gold is too fine for it.
Okay, I'm not sure what a spin it off is. Not familiar with it. Oh yeah, the government is very, very complicated in their land status stuff. But if it's BLM land, then you can go to the BLM and see, and they'll have the information. But yeah, it can get very, very complicated.
He says it's a magnet that goes in the drill chuck.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about there. Yeah, it's we're talking stuff down to the size of powdered sugar, and it would, that'd be terribly disruptive. But for placer gold, especially if it's like small nuggets, pickers and stuff, those things look like they'd work pretty good.
Oldmed points out anyone from any country can stake a 2-post claim in the Yukon for $10 Canadian.
Oh, sweet. That's nice.
You gotta go to the Yukon.
Yeah, well, and this is not a disparaging term, by the way, folks. I like to keep things light. So there's a guy named, I don't know what his real name is. He's got the AVE channel, but he's a Canadian and he likes to call Canada Canuckistan. So I will defer to the Canucky, to the Canuck and the Canuckistanis. But the Canadians have a much more rational mining system than the United States does at this time, or at least last I heard. For example,
AltMed is laughing at you, and Rick Jobling says, "Good evening, and do we have an update on the Minor Bago?"
Jim is going to be coming over tomorrow, and we're going to be getting into that. And hopefully, currently we don't even know for sure what's wrong with it. It was making kind of a metallic banging sound from the engine. It wasn't real loud, but it's not supposed to be there. So I shut it down to make sure it didn't spontaneously disassemble itself.
And now we have to get all kinds of tires.
And now we have to figure out exactly what's wrong with it. I'm pretty sure the number 8 cylinder, the piston, the rings are not doing their job properly, because I can just push on the connecting rod and it slides right back down. It's like it doesn't have any rings. And we have, let's see. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's metallic particles here, and they're non-magnetic. And let's see. There we go. Now you can see it. So I'm guessing that's probably aluminum from a piston. Not sure.
Lisa Harrelson asked, does our 1872 law still hold up on BLM land?
The 1872 law is still the law of the land on BLM, although it's been modified and interpreted differently. For example, originally, and in the plain language of the law, it says, if somebody finds what would lead a prudent man to believe there may be a valuable mineral deposit, you can stake a claim. Well, lately, the government, under the auspices of the environmental movement, has reinterpreted that to from what they call the prudent man test to what they call the marketability test. Essentially, if you find something that shows you can make money mining it, then you can claim it. Well, how the hell are you supposed to know you can make money without doing a whole lot more than grabbing a sample of rock?
Idaho says, well, I've been told in Idaho, if I prospect, I have to dig 2 holes, one for the mine and one for the environmentalist.
Yeah, well, there's also the 3S method of endangered species management: shoot, shovel, and shut up. That's another problem. Is you have all these regulations where somebody comes out there and says, well, I think I found the what was it, the Preble's jumping mouse or something. And so you're not allowed to do anything with that land. So it can be a pain in the ass. Are you using voice to text, Chris? Better to find old mines? I think you meant mines, and I don't think you would have misspelled that on a keyboard. But I'm not sure.
Get the old timer to tell you where existing holes are.
Yes, old timers can often be a wealth of information. But yep, you guys are funny. Yeah, it differs in each state. You're right, Lisa. The laws are different in each state. You have to look, but as a general rule, whether or not it can be claimed is up to the BLM. The exact details of how you claim it, such as the size of the monuments and things like that, is regulated by each state. But I say the BLM, I say it again, it was environmentalists who believe in preservation as opposed to conservation. That were just doing everything they could to keep people from mining anything or claiming anything. And so they just changed the rules, because the marketability test was applied for patenting a mining claim. In other words, turning it into private property. Once you proved you could make money with that property, then you could actually get title to it.
Chris points out that local mining district bylaws may come into play.
Yes, mining districts. One thing that a lot of people don't understand, mining district is not just some term. It's an actual legal entity, similar to a town. And that's what mining districts would do. A mining district would get together and they would form a legal mining district. And now within the boundaries of that mining district, the council or whatever they set up to run the mining district actually has legal say. They could essentially enact ordinances and that would have legal standing. And that's the advantage of having a mining district.
Oh, and I asked Chris how old the old mine counts. How old counts? And he said old enough to know where to dump the bodies and too old to go dig them up.
Man, they make heavy equipment for that now. You go down to Home Depot, rent a little mini excavator. It's not hard. But yeah, it's I can tell my mind's getting a bit old. I used to be able to do stuff that I can't do now, such as design stuff in 3 dimensions in my head, a mechanism, and now I got to use a piece of paper. Very, very annoying. I went to a neurologist this spring to get checked out because clearly there is some kind of cognitive decline. That's, beyond dispute.
Yeah, you talked about that last week.
I did?
Yeah, you told the story.
Okay, good. I'm a backhoe in 800, yeah. Okay, so I think Chris wants me to get a little more detail on the claims. And this is important. You have load claims and placer claims. Now, a placer claim by one person, I believe, can only be 20 acres, but you can have up to 8 claim holders on a placer claim and have a 160-acre claim. That's what a lot of these prospecting clubs do. They'll have 8 members of the club get together, they file a placer claim, and they get 160 acres. That does not work with load claims. A load claim is, I believe it's 20 acres. It's 600 feet by 1,500 feet, a maximum. And that's it. It doesn't matter how many claim holders. One load claim is 20 acres. And you have to be careful. If you have open ground and you stake a load claim, you have encumbered the mineral rights for yourself of both the bedrock underneath and the unconsolidated material on top, the soils, the gravels, the cobbles, anything like that. If it's not bedrock, it's placer. If it's an old mine and it has a dump, the dump is placer, not load. So if somebody stakes an old mine with a placer claim, then they've got the dumps. They don't have the vein. You'd have to use a load claim to do that.
Ricky C is here and says hiya.
Hi, Ricky.
And Chris also mentions it's called an association claim, apparently.
Yeah,
He says you have the right to the minerals in place along the strike of the vein.
Yeah. Now, once you file the claim, you only have those particular minerals, but there's some weird rules about it. Okay, first of all, you have to have a valid discovery. In other words, you can't just go out there and say, hey, that looks like it may have gold. Okay, you have to have some reason to believe that. You have to take a sample. You have to have had some research done where you can look at a report and say, see, this claim had stuff in it before. It went, it was closed. So I'm restaking it based on this information. If you don't have a discovery, you don't have a claim. You got 7 stakes in the ground and a piece of paper.
Chris points out, always file the placer claim first if you're chasing load, and AltMed has acquired the old Emma Gold mine on Cameron River.
Okay.
52 acres.
Okay, just a minute. Chris, it's my understanding that when you stake the load claim, if the placer is unstaked at that time, that load claim encompasses the placer at that point. The problem will be if you stake a placer claim, but you don't stake a load claim, then you don't have that load. And somebody else could theoretically stake the load right out from under you.
And Jeff Coate is here from Nampa, Idaho.
Okay. So because of that, you have to carefully consider what you're doing. The procedure varies from state to state and exactly what you have to do. Several years ago in Arizona, you have to put in a discovery stake with your claim documents in the discovery stake. You've then got 60 days to finish the staking. And that starts at the time you file a copy of that claim document at the county recorder's office. Until it's filed at the county recorder's office, you don't have a claim. You got a stake in the ground with a piece of paper out there in the hills somewhere. And if somebody else, if you stake it but don't file, and somebody else goes out and stakes it and then files it before you get to the county recorder's office, they get it, you don't.
Chris says, right, the reason to get the placer first is to avoid anyone exploring over the area as you're locating the extent of the vein. Often you end up with several veins on a region of interest.
You could. You could also stake multiple load claims. And another really...
And of course, Canada weighs in here. Ultimate says, in Canada, we can stake both online the same day.
Yeah. Now,
they're smart.
There is something very unusual about American mining law that is not intuitively obvious, but it makes sense once you get it. It's called the apex rule. Now, get out my little thing here. Let's suppose you have a vein running along here, and we're looking down on it. And so you stake a couple claims here. Okay. Now, let's suppose that vein is tipped at an angle, so that if you go straight down, there comes a point where it crosses this claim boundary. It goes, if you look at a vertical plane. And so can someone come in and stake claims next to you here, dig a shaft down, and then start mining this part of the vein? The answer is no. Because geology is so complex, if this is your vein and somebody has staked this area here, they own that vein all the way to the center of the earth. As long as it's a continuous geological structure, they own it. No matter who's got the surface rights or who stakes a mineral claim here, that would only account for the area that's on surface, any ore body that's on surface here. And that can get pretty complicated to figure out 1,000 feet under the ground. Is this the same vein as up there, etc.? There have been lots of lawsuits and probably a few bullets exchanged over this issue.
Chris says you need the load to establish your extralateral rights.
Yes. The extralateral rights would be the apex rule, basically. And extra meaning more than, lateral meaning sideways. Yes. If you got the load claim and the body continues down and eventually goes out past. Now, that is only along dip, not strike.
Ultimate asks if it's that way in Canada, too.
I have
Probably
no clue.
Not.
I have no clue. Now, dip and strike of a vein. Okay, this is my simulated vein here. Let's try it this way.
Chris does point out something to you here.
Okay, can I please explain one thing before you interrupt me again?
Yeah, but this is...
Okay. Okay. Well, technically, First to Discover has the right. Yeah, if they ran into there. But anyhow, dip and strike. For those of you who are not familiar with the terms, you will see dip and strike used a lot in geological things. Let's suppose this is a vein in 3 dimensions here. Now, the dip would be the same thing a skier calls the line of fall. You had nothing on top of the vein and it was a relatively smooth surface, and you put something on it and you let it go, and let's see what happens here. Hopefully I don't hurt myself. the line that thing just took, that is the dip of the vein. And that line goes in a particular direction. So in this case, the dip of the vein would be directly towards you folks. Okay, if that was north, it would be called dipping north. And right now it's about 45 degrees. Now it's about 70 degrees. So dipping north at 70 degrees means like this. Okay, it doesn't mean dipping up. Dip means down. It's going down to the north at 70 degrees. Strike would be a line of even elevation along the vein. If you looked at it from above, where would that line be? See, that line, let's say, would be right here. And that would be, if you're north, that would be more northwest. Okay. So if it says strikes northwest, southeast, that's what they're talking about. Dip 70 degrees to the northwest. Northeast.
Whitney and Tracy wants to know, how long is the claim good for time-wise? Chris and I have told her you need to maintain your annual paperwork. So why don't you explain how that works?
Okay. There's two kinds of claims in terms of general types besides load and placer. There's patented and unpatented. An unpatented claim is what you would get first. When you make a discovery and you put your stakes in the ground, you've got what's known as an unpatented claim. And that is a temporary acquisition of the mineral rights. It has to be renewed every year. Now, if you have less than 10 claims, you can file a small miner's waiver and you can substitute assessment work for a rental fee. If you have more than 10 claims, you have to pay a rental fee. Okay. And last I heard it was about $150 roughly, not sure, around there, for each claim to the government every year. Okay. In the past, it was relatively easy to get what they call a patented mining claim. Now, the 1878, whatever, the 1800s mining law was specifically designed to encourage people to go out west, try and strike it rich, etc., and to get people out there to get it making money so that it was self-sufficient and the U.S. government didn't have to pay for everything. So they wanted people to be economically successful, so they wanted to give them both inducements and make it easier. So if you go out there and you find a mineral deposit and it's a good one, they said, okay, you can actually file the paperwork. If you prove it's a good mineral deposit, a profitable one, then we will actually give you title to the land. Okay, it will now become your private property. That would be what's known as a patented claim. And a patented claim is essentially private property. So there's a lot of places where they use patented claims for vacation homes and things like that. Because it is private land. An unpatented claim is not private land. It's still government land. They regulate the heck out of it.
Yeah,
and all you do is you have the mineral rights. That doesn't mean you have the right to actually exploit those minerals or dig holes over so size or whatever. You can't just do whatever you want. You can't even camp on it more than so much, according to whatever rules they have at the particular area that you're in.
Don't forget to tell them about the county recorder stuff.
And it's all, extremely variable because the individual districts, the BLM field offices, have a certain amount of latitude as how they interpret the law. For example, the term significant disturbance is not defined in the law. So you might have one bureaucrat saying, if I can see a disturbance, it's significant. Another one might say, if it isn't big, if weathering is going to get rid of it in 10 years, it's not significant. So you have to check with your individual field office as to what they go by, what rules they have. You can't say, well, in Montana, they said this. Doesn't matter. It's a different field office. They have potentially different rules. Same law, different rules. It's a government job. Okay, they do that. Let's see. Sorry I was late. Hi, Rocket Boy. And so in the staking part, I think last week I mentioned that for claim stakes where you can use 2x2 posts, I like to drill a 1/2-inch hole in there and have like 12-inch steel bars and just pound them into the ground and stick the stake on. Makes it real easy. But yeah, the mining law is kind of weird and technical. So don't assume you know exactly what it is. Ask the local office or the local people. The Arizona Bureau of Mines and Mineral Resources has been very helpful to me in the past. Haven't talked to them in years, but at the time they were very helpful. I was up in Montana, and the Montana Bureau of Mines is fairly small at this point, but they got back to me and we were able to discuss things. Ask the experts if you're not absolutely certain, because you really don't want to go out there, stake a claim, get it developed, find a good ore body, and then have someone take it from you because you didn't quite do things properly. So make sure whatever jurisdiction you're at, you do it according to the rules of that jurisdiction, and check it out with the people who enforce the rules of that jurisdiction and get it in writing. Because if a regulator tells you XYZ is perfectly fine, and then comes by in a week and says, no, that's not fine, here's a $10,000 fine. If you don't have it in writing, you don't have a leg to stand on. Okay? It's ridiculous. And you have different agencies that regulate things. We have mine south of town here. And one time, probably 30 years ago, one of the engineers thought, man, we got a lot of different regulators here. How many different agencies have some sort of regulatory authority over us? And he went, from the BLM and the water resources people to the building codes people and everything else. 176 different agencies had some sort of regulatory authority over that one stinking mine. Now in Canada, it's much better. You have one regulatory authority. It doesn't matter if it's building codes, water resource, whatever, one. That makes it a whole lot easier. I've talked to mines where they said we had an electrical panel, and this inspector said he wanted us to mount that on a wood board so it was insulated. So we did. 6 months later, they've changed inspectors. This guy says, no, it has to be a grounded steel board. Well, what do? You got to do what they say, or else they can shut you down. And it can be completely arbitrary and capricious. Oh, and Chris, yes, don't assume the BLM guy you talk to actually knows what's legal either. Absolutely. That's why you get it in writing. If nothing else, it means you're not nearly as responsible. But yeah, they're not the ones that go to jail or pay the fines. Yeah.
Jeff is asking, has there been any regulations that have been lifted from the Trump administration? I haven't seen any yet either, Jeff.
Not in terms of the small scale mining that I'm aware of. I think a lot of regulations have been modified, but they tend to be more the ones that affect the larger operations, as far as I understand. Things like leasing, large tracts for fossil fuels and stuff, the sort of thing that is more of a national notice, importance sort of thing.
I know of none, and I keep an eye on it.
Yeah, Eva says she doesn't, and she's pretty good about researching things
Chris
like this.
said a couple of the water regulations that were about to kill us got doomed.
Yeah, I say, and that's it. I know that up in Idaho, they were having some interesting issues with the Forest Service and stuff 2 years ago. I mean, the sort of things where people were carrying weapons and saying, you might really want to get the hell out of here because we don't appreciate it. So yeah, it's it can get pretty complicated and intense, Yeah. And I say, it's They just come up with these new rules, new laws, etc. It gets crazy because the environmentalists are trying to acquire the legal authority to regulate everyone out of existence and then use it as they feel like. And of course, some people don't like that idea.
Jeff Coates said, I did notice here in Idaho, the Forest Service was going to possibly change the exploration size if it is less than 5 acres.
Yeah, and that's it. It's you got to look. Jim Durst up there in Helena, he's done some significant placer mining. I mean, big wash plants and heavy equipment and stuff. And so he's very familiar with the rules up there. And he said, there's been times where people show up and it's like, okay, you want to do that? Fine, write it down. My lawyer will have your job tomorrow. You're not allowed to do that.
Agenda 21, complete restriction of rural lands. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Agenda 32, Agenda 2030.
Yeah. And the public lands for the people, Western Mining Rights Association, organizations like that, deserve support because they actually go to bat for us. But they're also an amazing information source at times. So don't be afraid to ask them and make a donation. It's a lot cheaper than a lawyer. Agenda 2030. Oh, okay, that's you. But yeah, I say right now, I don't really want to get too much into politics because it's not that's not what people are here. But it seems like there's a large number of people who are going for control, centralized control over all kinds of aspects of our life. And the typical camel's nose under the tent, slippery slope arguments and stuff are true.
Chris says it's not even thinly veiled anymore. We had been trying to pass laws to essentially prohibit rural development in California.
Yeah. Yeah. And
well, his governor's crazy.
Yeah. California is a classic example of where all this leads. And if we as individuals and citizens don't stand up to what we sincerely feel is government overreach, then we deserve what happens to us.
Whoa, Altmed says, I've been offered a position on the executive of Vancouver Island Placer Miners Association starting next year, probably secretary.
Cool.
Yes, cool.
Cool. Vancouver Island, I presume you're going to have a fair amount of, you probably got a very schizoid population there too, where you have your rural individualists and you have your greenie weenies also, and I don't know what the proportions are.
Idaho says start investing in lead. Just saying. Ahmed says yup.
I've got enough copper jacketed lead to, either survive or die, one or the other. I mean, before I burn it all up, I'm probably going to be dead. There was a Jeff Cooper, very famous pistol shooter and instructor and stuff. He went one time, a person asked him, because he liked the 45 1911 and said, it doesn't have enough ammo. It's only got 7 rounds in it. And Cooper said, if you're any good, after 7 rounds, you're either alive or, you've either won or you're lost. If you're good, you're either going to hit the bad guy or you're going to be out of the action by then. So large quantities of ammunition expenditure, they're good for keeping other people's heads down, not for winning battles, in my opinion. Luckily, the Adobe Hovel here, it's pretty modest. But one nice thing is the walls are 12 inches thick of Adobe, and they'll pretty much soak up anything short of a 50 caliber. So we live essentially in a bulletproof house, which I find comforting, If you look over there, you'll see there's some sandbags partially covering the front window. There's a reason for that.
Ultimate says, I have 3 claims you can come out and see to see the area if we want to get up to Vancouver. Check out Pioneer Pauly, P-A-U-L-Y,
Yeah, I know.
on YouTube.
Pioneer Pauly's fairly well-known little one. He's talks to Dan Hurd. Yeah, Dan Hurd's up there in British Columbia area also. Yeah, I'd love to sometime.
Dave Saunders
So far, I'm
asks,
just really
how
busy.
familiar are you with certain rocks? Depends on the rock.
Yeah, it depends on the rock. That's a good question. Oh, there's another thing. Suppose you're taking samples and everything, and I mean, people love to send me pictures of rocks and say, "Has this got gold in it?" And I'm like, I can't tell. It's a picture. But to get a much better idea of what rocks there are, if you have the equivalent of a geological survey, a state geological survey or something nearby, you can quite often take the samples to them or go to a college geology department, community college or whatever.
Many of them also have exhibits of the local rocks.
And you can get some, often some pretty quality advice pretty cheap. It's very annoying when they reduced the budget over here in the, just a mile from my house right now is the Arizona Geological Survey Tucson office, public room. And I could literally go in there and go, "What's this?" And a PhD would look at it. And if he didn't know, he'd take it back to the mineralogist and then say, "This is what it is." That was
I know
really
says,
cool.
I got a huge collection of leverite.
Yeah. Yep. Leverite. Yeah, I've got putterite too. You know, a lot of putterite. I got buckets and buckets.
Ask Dave what he's got that he's interested in.
What do you mean? Oh, yeah. I'd say what kind of rock, Dave?
He says some VMS rock in northern Alberta.
VMS? I'm not sure what you mean by VMS.
Probably something to do with it.
So, volcanic metamorphic sedimentary. Northern Alberta. Oh, boy.
Volcanic massive sulfide.
Oh, okay. Well, if you got massive sulfides, then, I mean, it can have a lot of good stuff in it. Even if it's iron pyrite, it can have gold. So you'd really want to have, take that to an expert or take it to a lab and have it analyzed. You'd not only want the precious metals, but you'd also want a multi-element analysis.
Wow, there's some pretty looking stuff online.
The cost is really quite modest depending upon who you go to and how much speed you need. ALS Global up in Reno was very helpful this summer on multi-element analyses and a little bit of confirmation assaying, but their speed is slow, 3 to 4 weeks, because they deal with big guys. Little people like us just get put in whenever.
Dave says it smells really tinny when you rub your finger on it. Got it sent in for an IPC 45.
Okay, yeah. And so that's what you need to do.
Chris says watch for arsenic. Apparently, it typically has good copper values, lots of zinc, lead, some silver, gold, and the random PGEs.
Yeah, PGEs also. That can be getting pretty complicated in the extraction. But if it's massive sulfides, you may be easily able to just do a gravity concentration and then sell it to a smelter / refiner and let them have all the headaches. Sulfides themselves are usually pretty darn easy to concentrate either through gravity or flotation. Big volume flotation is the way they go. It works really well on sulfides. It can be very selective. You can basically float one sulfide and leave another one sitting there and then float it later using a different chemistry. So flotation is extremely versatile in that manner. But say sulfides, yeah, get your analyses, and that's where you have to have a lab, because you can't tell, how much lead, how much silver, how much, it's all, atomic alloy practically in some cases. And you just have to find that out.
Well, some of the ones I saw online when I looked at images a minute ago looked really pretty.
Well, yeah, I'd say massive sulfide just means sulfide in a big mass. And so, yeah, it's going to be pretty. Sulfides are shiny. They're pretty rocks, and generally crystalline, shiny rocks. Yay, pretty. Some are a lot more valuable than others. Yeah, I was talking to some people that had, sulfide cons. It was iron pyrite running 500 ounces to the ton gold. The cons, not the original rock. But yeah, it can be pretty intense. Molly, yep. I say there's lots of different things. You just gotta let the lab look at it, and then if you've got enough concentration and value in there, and then then the metallurgists have to get involved in terms of what do you have to do to get it out. Unless you're going with something like a simple gravity extraction concentration, you're probably going to have to get some expensive tests done in terms of flotation and things like that.
Blindside says the Columbia River basalt flows were released again. Now that's an interesting proposition.
Not to my knowledge. If they did, it would be very, very devastating. The Yellowstone hotspot is substantially less than it used to be when Columbia flood basalts were erupting. Some places, I believe, they're 2 miles thick and cover hundreds and hundreds of square miles. That was some non-survivable eruptions.
Dave says he's getting lots of placer gold in the same creek and lots of milky quartz. Found a piece of gabbro float angular didn't come from. Lots of azurite, chalcopyrite, and a bit of electrum. Electrum is very nice.
Yeah. I say if it sounds like you definitely need to do some more exploration there, some sampling, testing, etc. And if you had a sulfide mineral complex that had some free milling gold, it's also perfectly plausible to crush the rock, extract the heavies, extract a significant amount of the gold directly, keep that, and then ship the rest off to a refiner and have them, cut you a check. Not sure what the laws are in Canada, but in the United States, that original gold there, unless you sell it, you don't have to pay taxes on it until you do. You can literally just put it in your safe or dig a hole in the backyard, whatever. It's perfectly legal because you haven't sold it, so the value is indeterminate. You can't tax it until it has a value. Define IR Viz spec, Chris. Not sure. There's lots of different things. Your sulfides also would generally be amenable to X-ray fluorescence analysis because they occur in such large quantities. The precious metals that they might contain, on the other hand, I would say that your XRF would be pretty unreliable unless they were in very high concentrations. But to things like copper and lead and zinc, if they're not up in the at least 0.1% to multiple percent, it's not valuable, and the XRF can deal with that signal to noise ratio pretty well.
You've got a couple of other comments you can read and comment on
Okay.
there.
Not much bedrock exposure in Alberta, huh? Got a lot of muskeg and forest and things like that up there in Alberta. Lewiston, Idaho. Not familiar. We haven't been through that area to my knowledge. But yeah, road cuts are oftentimes very useful place to observe geology. And I suppose you could probably take a sample, although you're not going to be able to claim a road cut. But if you kept your mouth shut and used that as a piece of information to inform your behavior and say, okay, well, I found a vein right here in the road cut. I took a sample in the road cut and it assayed good. Then you climb up above the road cut and you can say, well, see, I saw this in the road cut, so I climbed up here and took a sample. See where I dug the hole? And that's my discovery.
Chris says it's mineral characterization by infrared and visible light spectroscopy. And Dave says they got a lot of eskers.
Ooh, eskers, I think, have something to do with glaciation. But anyhow, look that up, little one. Is that reflective spectroscopy, Chris, where they just shine something on it and you're getting reflection? Don't know a John Saunders. Okay. Yeah, I could think of it. Some road cuts are really complex geology that's
It's a long,
shown.
winding ridge of stratified sand and gravel, examples of which occur in glaciated and formerly glaciated regions.
Is it an
of
old
Europe.
moraine, or is it like a terminal moraine, or a side moraine?
Well, that's what they look like.
Oh, well, I can't see too well. Not sure on the esker, but from the sounds, it's
They look like railway
long winding
embankments.
ridge of stratified sand and gravel. Several kilometers long because their uniform shape look like railway embankments. I'm thinking that's more like an edge moraine of a glacier. It's gonna, plow along and as it melts
Most
on the side.
eskers are argued to have formed within ice-walled tunnels by streams that flowed within and under glaciers. They tend
Okay.
to form around the time of glacial maximum. When
Okay.
the glacier was
So basically
swelled and
sedimentation in a glacial tunnel, huh?
Mhm. They may also form above glaciers by accumulation of sediment in superglacial channels, in crevasses, in linear zones between stagnant blocks, or in narrow embayments at glacier margins.
Yeah.
Near the terminal zone of glaciers, where the ice is not moving as fast and is relatively thin.
Yeah. There's a lot of sediment created by glaciation, and you get terminal moraines and marginal moraines. A moraine is just the rock and
Hindsight
stuff
said,
that was in
"I've
the
trucked
ice.
for years. Those damn road cuts were my biggest distraction."
Yeah, I saw that one. You want to take over for just a minute, little one? I need a short break here. Old geezer. Be right back.
Hi, guys. Keep the mining questions to a minimum. I am no expert whatsoever. I am a Google food person. So, what's up? That pizza nugget keeps showing up. Hi, Joachim. How you doing? Good to see you, so to speak. Yeah, Bear is taking a short break to probably use the restroom. And basically, hey, AltMed. Basically, we don't know what's going on with bugs yet, and we have to buy a bunch of tires for the black truck because on the way back from the corn maze last night at 1:30 in the morning, we had a flat tire. And so we already needed to replace 2 front tires. Now we have to replace 4 tires. That's just the way things go. Hi, Chris. I would love to come back up there to Forest Hills. It was beautiful at Forest Hills. Very pretty up there. Yeah, and a missing jack. Bear is back.
Yeah, we didn't have a flat tire. We had a catastrophic failure. Essentially complete tread separation. And then as I took it off of the freeway, it dismounted itself from the rim.
Blindside said his corn stalk tire out? Not quite.
I'm not sure what it was. I think we've had a tread separation going on that tire for a while, and it finally just lost its integrity completely. And or while it was parked over there, there was a small leak that had developed, and so it was low pressure. But when I came to a stop at the side of the road, I mean, it got up on the freeway, started rolling, and it just felt squirrely. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of jerked a little bit and stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Slowed down. And when I pulled off the side of the road, there was a grinding noise. And I'm like, well, that's definitely not supposed to be there. And the tire was about 10 feet behind the truck. The rim is still on the axle. And it's one of these stupid things where it's got little plastic nuts that hold the fake hubcap on, and it's like, my God, all I want to do is change a damn tire. I need a whole toolkit.
And then I downloaded a flashlight onto my phone.
So yeah, we need to get the tires. The two front with there's a bad alignment there, and we knew we were going to have to replace those anyhow. But we're going to go and get a complete set of tires for the black truck, 8-lug Chevy, 16-inch wheels. And then when I get the minor Bago going, we're going to just swap the wheels and tires on the minor Bago so that it'll have brand new load range E tires on it. So that'll be good. And
Chris says that squishy feeling is never good.
No, I'd say when you're driving down the freeway and all of a sudden it just starts shimmying on you for no apparent reason. It's like, no. I have negative energy going on here now. I need to come to a stop. So anyhow, about that time of the year for tires. Well, blindside, I don't know where you are, but we don't do snow tires in Tucson. Yep.
Yeah. That should reduce the pucker factor next time we come up to Chris's claim.
Yeah. What? Only one tire? We still got those trailer tires on the back of the Bago. I want to swap them onto the trailer. The tires on the trailer, put them on the rims that are on the Bago, and then move all the ones that are on the Bago onto the black truck and put brand new tires on the Bago.
Blindside said, I haven't either. This is my first winter with 4x4.
Yeah, 4x4 is good. When you've got snow, 4-wheel drive is really highly useful. I've done a little bit of snow in the wintertime stuff. I'm not a big fan.
Oh, Bear, you're just a pessimist.
Yeah, the tires have worked fine, although theoretically they're not supposed to be used on a passenger vehicle, but
Jeff
they've
Coates
done
says,
fine.
have had a chance to see Jason's Mount Baker Mining and Minerals latest mining YouTube videos. Great stuff.
Yeah, he's getting a little better in terms of more practical application stuff. I still think Jason would probably be a little better if he broke them up a bit into separate videos so they're not as long. He does these long videos. He's actually are pretty informative. But when you're looking at a 30 to 40-minute video, that's a long time to watch. Whereas
Chris
if you
says
had
he could use an
15s.
MSHA class.
That's possible. Mine Safety and Health Administration is what that is. It's pronounced MSHA.
MSHA, got it.
And I say, I know they've got an interesting looking mine. Last few videos I've seen that I say it looked pretty interesting underground there, but I have way too little information to critique anything except it looks like some pretty good ore. I'm also I would love to hand pan some of his tailings just to see what it looks like, see what kind of recovery he's getting, as far as I can tell from panning as a gravity separation alternative to see how rich the tailings seem to be.
Chris says, my biggest gripe is low information density in the videos and not much research presented, which would really help.
Yeah, but I've seen worse. I try and provide good information density and good understandability in my videos. And if anyone has any gripes, complaints, suggestions on what I should do in general in the videos, I'd be happy to listen to that. What I'm trying to do is be more informative than entertaining. And say it's when I started it called Hard Rock University, there was a reason for that. I'm trying to teach people primarily, but in as entertaining a manner as I can without interfering with the educational part. I'm also trying to tighten things up a bit in the editing process to literally cut out non-essential, sometimes as little as 30 seconds to a minute. It's like, well, nothing really happens there. There's no real information. Let me cut that out, throw it off to the side there so that things move more quickly. And
well, Chris paid you a compliment.
Well, let me see.
Timothy has a question.
Thank you. Okay, Timothy. Okay, what's the question, Tim? Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. And I say, if anyone ever has any suggestions or questions, put them in the comments on the video. I'm getting a lot better than I was when I started. I'm getting a lot more comfortable with the editing too. Where did I learn all this from? I presume you're meaning the mining stuff. Back in 1978, I was working at a hardware store. My girlfriend got pregnant. I got married. I wasn't making enough money to pay the bills. My mother was a teacher, and another teacher she worked with had a son who worked at the United Nuclear Church Rock uranium mine in Gallup, New Mexico. It's an underground uranium mine. And so I packed up an old, what was it? It was like a 65 Chevy Apache GMC. Apache two-wheel drive, 3/4 ton pickup. Had the V6 in it. And went up there with a little camper trailer with the intention of, I'm not coming home. I'm just going to get a job. And I had to camp out for 2 weeks out by the mine. Eventually the secretary, because I walk over to the mine every day and ask anything today. And finally she said, it's going to be at least a month. I suggest you get a job in town and just keep checking back. And after about 6 weeks or so, I finally got a job at the mine. It was an underground uranium mine. Worked there about 1.5 years. Their tailings dam broke. So they laid off a bunch of people. I was one of the people laid off. Came back to Yuma, Arizona, where my family was. And there was an ad in the paper, a heavy equipment operator, rock driller wanted. And my mom or my stepfather, I forget, says, hey, there's an ad that looks right up your line. I'm like, well, didn't run that much heavy equipment. I mean, just the underground trucks and loaders. And they're like, yeah, well, that's heavy equipment. And I applied, and I got a job at the Chemgold Picacho mine in 1980, which was the company Chemgold later became Glamis Gold. We were their first profitable mine. After a couple of years working there, I became the mine operations foreman. My job was everything from exploration drilling, blast hole drilling, blasting, heavy earth moving, pad construction, lining the pads, stacking the pads, and then I would turn it over to the mill people to extract the gold. Had about 20 employees, 3,000 ounces a month was our production. We moved about 12 to 14,000 tons a day, 10-hour days. Got it. That's where I got in gold mining. Since then, I've done a lot of self-education on a lot of things. I'm just an information omnivore, kind of like Chris, only probably not as good as Chris in terms of that.
And
But
Chris says,
that's how I
your
got it.
first mine was a Superfund site. Which I said somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it probably did become that. Although, again, it's just low levels of radiation in the riverbed there. But it's uranium tailings. It's got something in it, but what the heck? You could cause a gold to show up my pan. That would be outstanding. If I could, yeah. The biggest trick to getting gold to show up in your pan is to get it in the pan in the first place. Location, location, location.
If Bear could get the gold to show up in his pan, that would be outstanding.
Was it passed on to me? No. My original father, my biological father, died when I was a year and a half old. He was a very smart man, apparently. He had a PhD in geology, worked for, was in the Army Corps of Engineers right after World War II. He was in Germany in like 46, which timing-wise was very good. But he was in Germany there, then worked for the Atomic Energy Commission doing uranium exploration in the Four Corners area. That's why I was born in Colorado. And once he got his 20 years in, he retired, went to work for Phelps Dodge. His first private sector job after government service was vice president of Phelps Dodge Mining Company. Basically, he was going to be in charge of things that aren't going right, you fix them. If there's a project that wasn't on track or whatever, his job would be to go out there, figure out what was going wrong, and set it right. Had he not died, I would have learned a heck of a lot.
Dave has an interesting question for you.
Okay, let's see. Here's Dave. Do you believe we are living in the last days?
Absolutely.
Eva does. I am not convinced one way or another. It is certainly a very unusual time. In some ways, it's consistent with the prognostications in some of the Bible there. But I don't try and determine that in terms of that's not going to make a lot of difference to my behavior. I am not a Christian because I disagree with some of the logic and the dogma, but I'm very strongly supportive of the Christians in general and how they're being persecuted in today's society.
You're spiritual.
And I do believe in God, and I believe that certain things are right, certain things are wrong, primarily golden rule type stuff. Like the Celtic, and it harm no one, do as you will, that sort of thing. Probably a little bit more restrictive than that, even if it doesn't harm someone. There's probably certain things that are not beneficial to your personal evolution. Eva's been dead twice, so she has her beliefs of what it is because she's been there. And I'm certainly not going to argue with her. So that's what it is. In terms of, do I think these are in very troubled times? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Dave says a lot of wickedness in high places. Rick Jobling points out, and he's right, keep an eye on the building of the temple. AltMed says you'll have to pick the world or God at some point, and very soon.
I've picked God, but when I pray and ask for guidance, this is what I feel I'm supposed to be doing right now. That could change in a heartbeat. I don't know. God, in my opinion, is the master of the multiple bank shot. And so what occurs may not seem useful or beneficial to you at the time, but in the long run may put you exactly where you're supposed to be. I don't know. I ask God to guide me, and I wish to serve his will. That's all I know. I've gone to Pentecostal churches and I've gone to Orthodox churches. I've done Indian sweat ceremonies. I've tried a lot of different things, making myself available. So far as God says, okay, you're trying, that's fine, but not ready yet. I haven't received my orders. I'm kind of like a trooper who's got the basic training, but until I get my orders, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So that's where I'm at right now. Sadly, wickedness in high places is not terribly unique. You got that right, Chris. And so let's say when it comes to more of the philosophical thing, I mean, I believe that a lot of things become overly complicated. For example, let's say gun control. The question is, does a particular policy cause more harm than good? And you have to take in both sides, which is guns are used for defensive purposes and guns are used improperly. And so what does what? And if you ban guns, what does that do in terms of stability of society and with respect to government and such like that? My personal belief is that statistically, it seems pretty obvious that gun control kills.
Chris says, can you hit your target? That is a.
Well, somebody else said gun control is being able to rapidly reacquire your sight picture. A little bit wordy, but very accurate. And as I say, so it's my belief that personal responsibility is the key. We all need to be responsible for our actions and take into account how our actions affect other people in a reasonable manner.
What is hateful to you, don't do to your neighbor.
Yeah. Golden rule, as originally stated before the English translation. But that's basically how I try and live my life. Eva and I got together, when was that? 16 years ago now? 2005.
Yeah, 16 years.
Something like that. No, it's 2020. So, no, it'd be 15 years. 15 years, almost, to the month, is when she'd been working for me for several months. And then a situation happened which forced us together, so to speak. It was external. It wasn't something happened just between us or whatever. And forced me to reevaluate my life, my priorities, things like that. And Eva stuck with me through thick and thin. She was there beside me, behind me, in front of me, whatever it took to get us through the situation. And I got over a lot of fear at that time, and in many ways, my life became much freer. If you let fear consume you, if you let potential consequences restrict your actions too much, then you don't live nearly as much as you would otherwise. And getting that balance, it's different for every person. Some people want security, and that's their focus. My mom was a child during the Depression. She wanted financial security. That was her thing. Years ago, I wound up with my brother and my daughter helping a fisherman on the mouth of the Klamath River. He was buying Chinook salmon from the Indians and shipping them up and down the coast. And it was an adventure. It was different. It was, we're doing stuff most people don't do. And I found out I really liked that. And luckily I have a wife who's comfortable, the same sort of thing. She doesn't need a lot of stuff to feel comfortable. And that's why we do the traveling and the adventures and that sort of thing. When the shit gets real, you take the measure of a man. Yeah. And just as when there can be no courage without fear, there can be no virtue without temptation, Chris, in my opinion. If you're never tempted to do anything wrong, there's nothing virtuous in not doing anything wrong. You didn't want to, you know. Eating a proper diet is only virtuous when you want to eat something improper.
Stephen B. points out that helping people with emotional issues is much harder or more expensive than gun control up here. Yeah, that's true.
The other problem with helping people with emotional issues is you have to get their cooperation. They have to be trying to work with you. And then you have to have someone who's competent to help them with their emotional issues. I mean, a lot of psychiatrists are whack. I mean, it's got the highest level of mental health problems of any profession. And it makes sense. If you're crazy or have tendencies that way, you tend to wonder why and get into that field. But the other issue is I cannot tell what's good for you. Only you can tell what's good for you because you have different needs, different desires, different strengths, and different weaknesses than I do. And so what would work well for me could be fatal or terribly counterproductive for you. And it's so individual, it makes it quite challenging for someone else to even ascertain what's the best path for you. They can certainly give you advice like that's a dumbass move. You know, you take the hammer and go like this, it's going to hurt.
Shrinks are as crazy as their patients.
In many cases, absolutely. But that's to reach happiness. First, you have to understand yourself, who you are, what you are, and what you want and don't want and need and don't need, so that you can kind of make decisions based on that.
If I may say this,
Oh,
the
go
point
ahead.
should not be happiness. The point should be contentment, satori, the state of contentment and enlightenment.
Okay. To me, that would be happiness. I'm not talking pleasure.
The two are not mutually exclusive, but they're not quite the same.
They're not precise synonyms, yes. In my opinion, and we're getting philosophical here, if anyone wants to throw in a question about mining, go for it. But in my opinion, our young folks have been horribly miseducated in that they believe that pleasure equals happiness, and it isn't. It's entirely separate.
And that happiness can be given by external things.
Yeah, happiness is something that comes from within. And so they seek happiness by sex and drugs and partying and all this other stuff.
iPhones.
And iPhones, yeah, get the newest iPhone. It'll make you happy. No, it won't. You just sit there and push buttons all day long. Happiness comes from accomplishment, from overcoming challenges, from meeting those challenges, from doing something difficult and beneficial. When you go out there and
fulfilling experiences.
yeah, I mean, when you help someone and you truly help them, that's very, very satisfying to a normal person. You have to have balance. You have to take care of yourself. My eye's itching here, sorry. But you have to take care of yourself too, because you can't help anyone else if you need help just to take care of yourself.
Well, Stephen points out, I'd rather have a consistent mood of meh than swings from emotional highs and lows. Don't go chasing extremes at either end. Exactly. That's what contentment is, where you're there and it's good.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I like the highs. I don't like the lows. And I'm not perfect. I get frustrated and angry, sometimes at little stuff. But again, different people work differently. I mean, you have these people you see like on the X Games, etc. If they were to try and live like you, they would probably go crazy and commit suicide. They're just not built that way. Although it works. Don't touch your eye. Well, it itches. Happiness is a good PM fire. Depends on the wind direction. Sometimes it can be kind of unpleasant. By the way, the reason the smoke seems to chase you around the campfire is because it does. Because the wind blowing against your body creates a vacuum on the lee side, which will tend to suck in the smoke no matter which way it's blowing. Unless it's blowing kind of parallel to you, it's going to tend to blow it whether you're in front of the fire or on the far side of the fire.
Ricky
Interesting
C says,
fact.
me and Susan live completely off grid, and at first I was skeptical about it. We both love it. Many would hate it.
Exactly. And another thing,
Chris, yep, fluid dynamics worse.
another thing that most people are confused about when they're young is what to look for in a long-term partner. And they're looking for love and passion and excitement and stuff, but you need to have compatibility above all. There's nothing wrong with love. There's nothing wrong with passion, assuming it's fairly equal on both sides. But mainly, you have to have compatibility. Similar in the ways that you need to be similar to work, and different in the ways you need to be different in order to work out. I like to cook. She does the dishes. Works for me.
AltMed says we should all start a mine together, our own mining town. Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah. And so that's, again, something that our young people have not been brought up to look for is how does that work? There's a psychologist, Dr. Laura Schlesinger, who wrote a couple of books, Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands and Proper Care and Feeding of Wives. And I can't tell about the wives because I'm not a wife, so I can't tell for sure. But when she was Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands, it made perfect sense to me. She said, ladies, you got to understand something. Men are simple creatures. You sit there and say, how do I look in this dress? And he looks over and she goes, fine. Says, that's it. There's no subtle context. There's no triple entendres, or he's not, fine, bud, or this. It's like, fine. And now his mind's somewhere else. Women are much more complicated. And so when you ask another woman, how does this make me look? And they go, fine. Well, that's way too simple an answer. So they must be hiding something,
AltMed says they can set up a mine and give percentages to foreign entities. We're talking about starting our own mining town.
Up in Kanukistan?
As a group.
Yeah. And so that's consistent with my experience. My ex-wife, many years ago, classic. What's wrong? Ask her, what's wrong? Well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. Okay. If you're going to be that way, I'm not going to play this game. And I've learned you don't play games with people like that. It doesn't work. If you want to communicate on a basic level and they don't, then you're not terribly compatible. Even I have our differences. I am not the easiest person to live with. That's for sure. She's got certain negatives also.
Oh, thanks.
But the thing is those aren't deal breakers for us. And the other positives vastly outweigh it.
Chris says unilateral dysfunctional communication, always wonderful.
Yeah, sounds like it. Eva doesn't mind sleeping in the back of a Suburban in the middle of nowhere and rappelling down mine shafts. How many women would? I remember somebody commented on the video, the first one where she was actually in it underground this summer. It's like, what was that creature? It looked like a female, but it wasn't whining about its hair or nails or yabbering. It's like, yeah, I couldn't deal with that.
Well, Steven says you need to be able to sit in silence for more than 10 minutes. People my age, mid-20s, think my partner and I are nuts because we can sit beside each other for 3 hours and not say a word but be happy. Totally the same thing here, Steven.
More on her part than mine, but yeah. And there's the compatibility thing. You know, you can both do that and be happy. Now, if only one of you could, that wouldn't work out too well. And that's what I mean by compatibility. The important things, you work. Eva likes to travel. I like to travel. She likes adventure within reason. I like adventure within reason.
And you have the same moral structure.
And yeah, we have pretty much the same moral structure. Yeah. Yep. So I'd say our children have been, in my opinion, woefully screwed up by our educational system and our cultural systems, and taught to, first of all, not think. And I'm not saying think poorly, but to literally not think at all. You're supposed to have an opinion, not a logically thought out conclusion for facts and a line of argument, you know. And this is manifesting itself nowadays as you have this cultural system. It's got a political component also, but it's essentially a culture, a subculture of, you know, the intersectionality and feminism and this and that and the other. I mean, there's no feminism political party. It's associated in general with one. But when you have statements like, there is no difference between men and women, but we must have a woman president. Well, those two statements are logically inconsistent. You know, one of them or both of them has to be wrong.
Chris says, now you're asked what's your opinion rather than what's your position and why, which is exactly right.
Yes, I would agree. If your opinion isn't based on facts, it's not very valuable in terms of reality. I would love to have a situation where somebody comes up and says, opinions are, you know, that's the important thing, is what you believe. And I said, well, okay, then put your hand on the table and believe very, very firmly that this hammer is not going to hurt, and will test your theory. You know, see how well that opinion trumps reality thing actually works. You know,
G Wolfman 76 says these live streams are awesome, and Blindside says this has been a fun one.
Well, good. I'm glad to say, if anyone has any mining stuff, that's fine. If not, we can do philosophy or whatever.
Actually, Michael Oster has a mining question for
Okay.
you.
Can someone come into my unpatented mine while I am there and place their own stakes and location notices? BLM surface land. Now, if you have a load claim with placer rights, answer is no, not if it's valid, because they have no way to make a discovery and it's already taken. It's not open for mineral entry. Now, if you have a placer claim and the undergirding lode is still open and unclaimed, then to a certain extent, yes, they can. Now, see, they're allowed to walk over your land as long as they're not interfering with it. They're not allowed to take any samples from the surface, but if they were to walk down an open tunnel and take a sample from the subsurface, you don't have those mineral rights, so you can't exclude them. You would need to talk to your, let's say, different states have different rules. In Arizona, it's possible.
He says, I tried calling the sheriff and he didn't know what to do. They're load claims.
Okay.
And Chris says, make very sure it's valid and properly described.
Yes, make sure they're valid, properly described. Videotape everything. Okay. Make sure you can identify the people, etc. Then go talk to a lawyer. But they can't just stake land that you already have the mineral rights to. Okay. Now, in theory, when it gets to the BLM, to register, they should reject that claim. Also file a complaint with the BLM saying these people were on my valid claims staking, so that they know, because all they get is it's in this section, so to speak, and they're not checking maps to see if there's any encroachment. So it may or may not overlap. They don't know. But if you send them a registered letter saying these people were staking claims on this date on my claims, here's what it is, get their documents from the county recorder's office, your documents from the county recorder. Well, theoretically, the BLM would
Michael
have.
says,
I'd
yeah,
send
but
it
what
to.
do I do when I'm on the claim and they show up with stakes and want to put the stakes in?
I would say videotape at the most, because your life is not worth it. Okay? Videotape, document everything, because they are now trespassing essentially. If they take one rock off of your thing, they just stole from you. Okay? That's a criminal act. Okay? If the sheriff won't enforce it, if he can document it, that's good. But it's essentially a civil action at that point. It's not a criminal action. But if somebody starts using force or threatening force, now you can wind up in a criminal situation. I had a guy that thought I was on his claims, and I'm like, no, here's the paperwork. I put these stakes in the ground. You bought those claims from my buddy, and they're right there. I staked them. I know where they're at. And he was getting a bit annoyed. But I'm like, look, let's go look at the stakes. It was a different situation, but nevertheless, these things can escalate. People can be armed. People can be killed. Okay? It's not worth your life if you have done your job properly. If those are your claims, then you can enforce that. Okay? It's a lot better to win in court than die in the field. Don't risk your life. Document it to the best that you can safely.
License numbers.
Yeah, license plate numbers.
If they believe they have a right to be there, they should give you their name and information.
Yeah, and when they're staking, they have to leave a document there. So when they're gone, just get the document, copy the information, put the document back in. Don't tear their stakes up or whatever. Videotape everything, photograph everything, get witnesses.
Michael asked,
All
why
that
is
stuff.
it not criminal trespass intent to hold on a valid mining claim? They have admitted my claims are valid.
Then they're idiots. Okay? I'll say, if they admit your claims are valid, time for a lawyer. Okay? I don't know if it's criminal per se. I know that if they steal, if they take a sample, that's theft. That's a criminal thing. In terms of trespass, if they're not interfering with your ability to do whatever you want, then they have the right to walk across a mining claim. It's still BLM land, and free passage is basically guaranteed unless it interferes with your operation or causes a hazard or something like that. But again, the basic rule applies. Document, file a
Chris
complaint.
says it is criminal trespass, and once you've informed them of that, the sheriff can remove them. They're making an unlawful monuments upon valid mining claim.
And that may be true, but if the sheriff won't do it, which is what this guy was saying, and I can understand the sheriffs aren't expert in mining laws. But this, again, you file your complaint, your lawyer files a couple things, and then you ask for your attorney fees be paid for these bozos.
Blindside asks, BLM can't clear that up?
Yes, they can clear it up. That's what I'm saying. But it's not something that can be cleared up right then. There's not a BLM guy walking around out there for you to track down. You have to document, get a lawyer, deal with it, and then seek damages. And I would require them to remove their monuments while you were videotaping too. It's like, nah. But I say, you have to look and see at the psychology. Are these people truly whack? Are they dangerous?
Michael says,
Yeah.
so I'm not trying to risk any life. Everything is peaceful. However, when the sheriff called BLM Tucson office, the BLM Tucson ranger said anyone has a right to go onto my mineral claim and put stakes.
Yes, but it doesn't give them a claim. Say they put a stake there, so there's a stake there. Once you've adjudicated with BLM, then BLM could order them to remove their unlawful stakes or this, that, or the other. That's what I'm saying. This is a legal matter more than a physical matter. If they start mining, if they start turning soil over, call the sheriff. They're illegally mining on my claim. And again, go down to the BLM office and say, here's the videotape. They're illegally mining. Here's who it is. I need a letter right now telling them they're not allowed to do this. Get your records out and write it up. And then now you'll have something from the BLM you could give to the sheriff when they show up. Say, see, Mr. Sheriff, the BLM says this is illegal. And there they are.
Yeah, Michael
Tell them to
says,
get
I
off.
know the sheriff is hearing from BLM in Tucson that anyone is allowed to put stakes on BLM land, even if there is a valid claim. Well, are there stakes for mines or are there stakes for other things?
No, it'd be basically mining stakes. But again, part of this is because BLM adjudicates this in the office. They look on the maps, they look in the records. They say they don't do it in the field. They don't go out there and say this person's right and that person's wrong in the field. And that's where you're going to have to say document, go to BLM, get a letter saying that these claims are valid and any portion of those claims that overstake them are not. For example, let's suppose you had 2 mining claims, okay? And they're laid like this, okay? Now, if this Brown claim was first, okay, then this part of the White claim here and here might be valid and the inner part not. Although because it's discontinuous, it would probably only be one or the other, wherever the discovery monument was, okay? But one of the things that can happen is if you have 2 mining claims, let's suppose you don't go on the opposing mining claim, okay? So now you've got your stakes are 2 feet off of their stakes. Well, there's a 2-foot strip there that isn't claimed. On the other hand, if you overlap, then the valid claim is valid up to the point where your new claim takes over. So yeah, you can stake. That doesn't give you the rights.
Yeah, he's down in Cochise County. He says, so far they've put up a location notice in the north line. They have yet to come back to put the other 5 monuments. Why should I let them on my claim to finish the monument?
Because the only way to stop them is to engage in a gunfight and wind up in jail for the rest of your life. Is that a good enough reason? If there's a car accident and you get hurt, you don't go over to the person's house and try and beat them up. That's your lawyer's job, to beat them up in court, to get the money for you. Okay? And say, why do you do it? Because it's a lot better than the alternative. If they haven't put up those monuments in so many days, guess what?
Yeah, apparently the Tucson
It's
BLM
invalid.
office has gone weird again.
Yeah, the BLM is not out here to help people. Okay, the BLM is out here to keep people off public lands nowadays. But yeah, I say it's not their job to go out in the field and referee. They look in the records and write letters. That's
yeah,
what they
I would
do.
get a mining lawyer.
Yeah, I say if they haven't put their additional monuments up, they've got so many days. I think 60 or 90 days, something like that. Okay. So if you had videotaped when they first came out, and therefore you have date stamps and everything, I mean, you should theoretically have a date that you called the sheriff's, that's record. And they have so many days. And if in that time their stakes are not there, because they may research along and go, oh, fuck, we screwed up, man. That's not going to work. And then drop the whole thing. Don't know what's going on in their heads. Sometimes I don't know what's going on in my head. But I say, if they haven't completed the process in the allotted time, and I say, go down to the county recorder's office and make sure they've actually recorded the claim documents. Say they might have gone out in the field, dropped the stake, found out, wow, there's a conflict here and everything, checked it out and go, oh, we're screwed, and then just dropped it. You don't know. Say if they haven't filed at the county recorder's office, doesn't matter, there's a stake on your claim. Wait the required 60 or 90 days or whatever, document that it's still there at that time, but the others are not, and then remove it while you're videotaping. Okay? And say this is essentially litter on my property. But don't break the rules yourself, because as long as only one side's breaking the rules, it's really easy to tell who the good guy and who the bad guy. When both sides are breaking the rules, now it gets really complicated and subject to subjective decisions by the bureaucrats. So say that would be my advice, is to document everything, file a complaint with the BLM, check to see if they filed their paperwork at the county recorder's office, keep an eye out for other stakes showing up. If they haven't showed up in the required time frame, again, videotape using a camcorder with a date stamp, document all that, and then send a letter to the BLM, saying they haven't done this and that and the other. And, if I haven't heard, and you might consider having your lawyer, not you, your lawyer, send them a letter according to whatever documentation says is the contact information, and say, you filed this claim, you put this stake out there even though it was invalid, you were told it was so, and you failed to complete the process, therefore your claim is invalid, and you've got 10 days to dispute this. And if at the end of the 10 days you haven't disputed it, we assume that we're all in agreement that you screwed up and he's going to remove your stake. But that way you're covered. And yes, you may actually have to get a lawyer. Here's another thing. There's something called legal insurance nowadays. This might be a good time to have some, But that's what I would do. You have a dispute. The ground's not going to go anywhere. If nobody's out there with heavy equipment moving stuff, and they're not going to without the BLM giving them a plan of operations, they are without a plan of operations. Hey, throw them in jail right now, confiscate their equipment. But yeah, just if nothing's changing except there's a stake on your land, it's an annoyance. Okay, a lot of times, part of the problem with dealing with reality is recognizing what's merely an annoyance. It may be a major annoyance. Eva today was working, I think she was playing some sort of a game online, and she'd racked up so many games, and she was going for a certain number. And I went and unplugged the wrong extension cord. And just everything she'd done was just gone. And she assured me, no, it's not a disaster. It's just an annoyance, a major one. Yeah, modest on the scale of annoyances. Not as much as having a flat tire at 2 a.m. with no jack, but nevertheless, it's an annoyance. It's not a disaster. And don't let an annoyance turn into a disaster because you don't think and act under control. That's just really counterproductive. You are in charge of the decisions you make running your life. If you screw up, that's your fault. Okay? So don't screw up on the big things. Little things, you can screw up. Big things, don't. Being dead, that's a big thing. Getting seriously injured, that's a big thing. Getting in a shootout where you win and you were legally justified in shooting still means tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Okay. Best to avoid it. Okay. No sense dying for stuff. No sense killing for stuff. That's what lawyers are all about. Yeah, it's annoying. Abso-freaking-lutely. But they say, don't let it make you do something crazy. Yeah. Why should you let them move a rock on my claim to support their stake? Because it's better than the alternative. That's it. Yep. Can I bury the location notices in pill bottles underground? Not legally. No, it's got to be on the stake or in the monument. Okay. Now you could have duplicate notices. I mean, you could have, for example, a 4x4 stake 4 feet high stuck in a big pile of rocks. And on the 4x4 stake is a container with a location notice, but also underneath it, buried in a ball jar or something, is also another one. Moving that rock would have been enough to charge them with theft, potentially. Yes, I say that's just it. If they don't have the right, then just file the paperwork. Say it's the sheriffs aren't knowledgeable. It's not a felony. It's not something. They're not going to write a citation on it. That's BLM's job, and they can send cease and desist, and they can file, complaints, etc. Have you made any progress with the Montana ore? Not working directly on the Montana ore. I'm working on the processes that should be applicable to the Montana ore. And we have been making some progress both in the concentrator, and I just shipped some stuff to Chris Georgie to do some flotation testing on. And so I say it's a deal where you could call it progress, but it's nothing. There's no victories to report. How's that? We're moving equipment, getting ready to engage in battle. But the first shots haven't been fired yet. Did you find any pine oil? Not yet. I haven't put much effort into it yet. It's been a busy week, and this week's going to be the same. A potential project has come up that's going to take all my focus for the next couple of weeks in terms of any free time. And afterwards, if things work out, it may take a lot of my time. We shall see. Can you you can bury notices of location, but it's not the legal place to do it. It has to be in the monument. So if you had a 4-foot high stack of rocks, it could be in a bottle in the stack of rocks. If it's in a, post, a lot of people just take a jar and screw the lid to the post and then put the notice in the jar and screw the jar to the lid. Something like that. And you can definitely put duplicate notices so somebody can't come say, well, see, my notice is in that, and say, yeah, dig under there, sucker. Especially if it obviously hasn't been disturbed for a while. But the main thing is where's the paperwork at the county recorder's office? If they file a document dated March 26th on July 30th at the recorder's office, July 30th is the important time. Yeah.
Chris says, wait.
Oh,
geologist?
Company geologist? Oh, company geologist. Well, now you may have a lawsuit against the company. Yes, they are supposedly knowledgeable enough. And depending upon the situation, there are times where they can come out and do some staking, but they're supposed to get proper notice first and this and that. But yeah, if they haven't crossed their T's and dotted their I's, oh yeah, now you can get some money.
Actually, it's by date of location, not date of recordation.
Yeah, but what if you have two that have the same date, or, I mean, presumably, Michael did it years ago, and these guys just came in and did it. And if they say, well, we did it 3 years ago, but we didn't file it until today, well, that doesn't count. You've got like 90 days. So he's got prior, that right there. So that would, legally, you're in good shape. But if it's a company, oh, now you're talking deep pockets here. Yeah, get a lawyer. And in terms of the date of recordation, it depends on where you're at, Chris. But yeah, if those are company geologists, yeah, now the company can be on the hook for illegal stuff. So yeah, you'd want to get a lawyer to ask, or you could, even if you wish to, simply write a letter to the company and say, why were your geologists on my claim staking it when I told them not to, blah, blah, blah. And the nice thing about that is, since they're not talking to a lawyer, they might not be smart enough to be real careful and admit something that your lawyer can tear them apart on. Yeah. And I say it's one of those things. This is all legal stuff, but if you were there for a substantial time period beforehand, it should be very easy to prove that. If you were there when they were showing up and you told them to get the hell off and they didn't, saying they're working for a company. Well, that company's now on the hook for what their employees did. So it could get valuable. You might actually make more money off of this than your claim. And that's one of the things I really like about this situation, Michael, is that we have kind of a little community here. Chris is a heck of an information resource, and we can kind of help each other out here. That's nice. In terms of maybe they're interested in buying you out, yep, or leasing. Say it's possible. But yeah, say one of the advantages of writing to the company yourself is that they are not going to be as cautious as if they're writing to your lawyer. And that can be useful sometimes. But it would be prudent to consult with a lawyer, even if they didn't necessarily write the particular letter. Life gets complicated, that's for sure. But yeah, it's that's how things are supposed to. It's like when you see these situations where people are saying, well, the police behaved improperly. Well, the proper response is not to resist arrest. The proper response is to record it and have your lawyer deal with it in the morning and wind up with a 6-figure check in your pocket. Better to be rich than dead. I say it just, certain things work and certain things don't. How much material did I send for flotation? I don't know. Probably about 20 pounds or so. Yeah, Rick, you're just causing trouble, you troublemaker, you. But Jimmy, it's what Chris said he needed to do some small-scale testing. He's doing pretty small-scale testing, and we'll see what happens on that and kind of go from there. But it's just, if it fits, it ships. Large box. I'm guessing about 20 to 25 pounds. May have committed CFR. Okay. 3830.9. What's that? Go ahead, Michael. I'm not sure exactly what 3830.9 is. I'm certainly not disagreeing with it. Okay, Michael. Thank you. I hope it's been useful, and let us know later how things turn out. You got us all interested here. What time is it? 8:26? Oh, geez, we've been at this for 2.5 hours again. Man, the time flies when you're having fun. Well, I suppose I really ought to, hang up and get to bed here on this party call. Is there anything else anyone's got? Yeah, say anything. Oh, if there's no subjects, this is probably a good time to call it quits. But if somebody wants to say something or ask something, let's go ahead and get it in here. Oh, and Chris, as usual, thank you for all the help. I appreciate it. Well, if the texting you saying they know their claims are valid, then they must be using some theory that gives them the right to do that or something, but I'm not sure what. Well, 6MTZHP, I am glad for any assistance I've been able to render. Say we got a bunch of other smart people here too. Yeah, make sure you save that text. You betcha. Planning a similar thing next week. I may try posting the notice a little earlier. Did everyone get the notice around 5 o'clock, 5:10 or something is when I theoretically scheduled it, so it should have gone out around then. Not sure what you folks see when I do it. Yeah, making of false statements, yeah. Yeah, that and admitting that you did something that you didn't know was wrong, that was wrong, yep. Notice worked fine. Okay, Chris. Turquoise, okay. That's cool. Say, as long as they're not stealing your stuff at the time, then you've got time to deal all, with this legally. Yeah. Chat pops up when we come to the stream before I show up. So did the chat start as soon as the notice popped up, Chris? I'm not sure. Because I think it would be nice to give a little more notice. Okay. I'm not a highly skilled electron herder here, so I'm learning as I go along. What exactly area? Obviously, you're probably in the Tombstone area or the Bisbee area, something like that. Okay, thank you, winging it. Thank you, Chris. I'm a good yacker. Okay, it's just one of my natural talents, so to speak. I can yak for hours and hours, and I tend to get repetitive sometimes. So if I'm telling a story or whatever, and everyone's heard it before, just say, "Okay, don't want to hear that one anymore."
We're gonna go check out Michael's turquoise, aren't we?
Yeah, I asked him where he's at.
Yeah, he says he's well in your area, in the area. Come check out Portland turquoise.
I'm not that good, Chris. I got wranglers that help me from time to time. Joachim especially, but Eva's reasonably knowledgeable for a layman, basically, and her son is more knowledgeable for a non-professional. Would you call Ryan actually kind of a professional electron wrangler? Because he's like rewriting programs. Yeah, semi-pro.
He runs a really cool Minecraft server. Does that count?
I don't know. I don't know enough to know what a really cool Minecraft server is in terms of complexity. But yeah, he did with that trapeze. He was rewriting stuff and everything too, wasn't he? Yeah. So her son's pretty knowledgeable on these things also.
And he also took Cisco training for networks and things.
Yeah.
And he builds computers. He built my computer.
Yeah. So as I say, I have people. Yeah. You need a mountain torn down. You need a computer built. No, I'll have to get you someone else. Let's see. What happens to your claim you were working last year and how they come? Okay. Some of the claims that I've done a lot of videos on south of town here. When we were in New York during the summer, I had Eva's son send in our annual small minor waivers to BLM. And they didn't, and they never do, by the way. They never find a problem until after the deadline. You know, you can send it in 6 months ahead of time, and a month after the deadline, they'll tell you there's a problem. So just be aware of that. But anyhow, we sent them in, and I had basically just made copies of previous ones and left the date blank because it's identical to the one last year. So you just got to change the date. And they said, a facsimile of a signature is not a signature. And therefore, this is a non-perfectible error on our part. And therefore, they took all our claims. They just invalidated them.
Yeah, Michael says
So.
Lying to the BLM.
Ah, okay. And so, like 30 claims just went bye-bye, and I'm tired of fighting them for that area there because we hadn't found anything really good. And if we knew something really good, we'd go down and reclaim it anyway. So I've just said, instead of spending time and effort on that, I'll look other places and do other things, which has been rewarding. I've been able to stay busy, have a good time, better opportunities than what I had on my claims, at least anything that I could identify. Now, some of these are a lot farther away, like Montana, but you know what? That's not bad in the summertime. I can live with that. Say we got other stuff we're looking at down here.
You're just unreasonably pessimistic about winters.
I'm not unreasonably pessimistic about winters. I don't believe temperature should be below 0. Okay, 0
says,
is the minimum.
Appeal that it should have been provisionally curable.
No, they said it wasn't. That was it.
And Alfredo says, I am in Mexicali, Mexico, but go looking for veins in Sinaloa, Mexico. Found a vein about 6 inches wide of sulfate material. Identify color of copper present.
Okay. So you found a 6-inch wide sulfide vein with some copper staining and such. And you'll need to determine what's in it. So you have mineralization, but how valuable it is depends on what is actually there. So you'll need to take a sample and have it analyzed at a laboratory. And you're pretty much going to want to have a fire assay for gold and silver and a multi-element assay or multi-element analysis, which will cover, copper and lead and zinc and silver and all kinds of other stuff. And that should cost you less than $100 to get that done. So it's
Do you recommend any assayists in the U.S.? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Joachim. In the United States, Now, to do the multi-element analysis, you have to have some fairly sophisticated laboratory equipment. Just the fire assay, there's a couple assayers I use that are fairly quick. They're not terribly expensive. One is $40, one is $45. I've cross-checked them with each other and another, and they do. But they cannot do the multi-element analysis, which is what you need if you're looking for base metals, copper, lead, zinc, things like that. Now, let's see if this will...
Chris points out shipping
Wow.
is problematic.
It's reversed.
Yeah, it's reversed.
Wow, why is that, I wonder? Anyhow,
I can
okay.
read it, it's right.
Oh, it's only on my computer screen that it's reversed?
Mhm.
Okay, this is the one right here. ALS Global. This is in Reno, Nevada. And that's their address. And this is their phone number. And they can do the multi-element analysis and fire assay. And I think the multi-element analysis is about $40. The sample preparation is about $10. And the fire assay for gold is, I think, $18.50, and for gold and silver, about $25.50. The problem with these people is that it'll take you about a month to get your results back. They're quite reasonably priced. They don't have a minimum. Oh, sorry. There's also a $30 fee for each batch of samples you send, and that's the paperwork fee. When they get them, they punch it all into a computer. It generates a bunch of labels that they stick on all your sample bags and stuff. And so there's a $30 fee for each batch that you send. And then it's the individual samples, different tests. ALS Global, they were pretty nice to work with, and they have no minimum, at least at this time. They are a big multinational reach.
Chris says it reads fine here, you're seeing it direct.
Something like that. On my computer screen, it looks reversed. But anyhow, so they were easy to deal with. Results in about a month. Prices, as I say, are reasonable.
Yeah, Chris points out shipping may be problematic for Alfredo.
I don't know what the shipping would be. They may also have a place in Mexico. You could call the Reno office and say, here's where I'm at. Where should I send it to? I know, for example, they have a lab in Tucson, which I intend to go to and visit next time I'm going to do samples of that time frame and type.
Rita Tracy points out, I suspect silver will be worth a lot more money by the end of 2021.
I have no idea. This whole situation is so weird. But so I say, if you call them up at that number, they'll be able to tell you. There may be, a lab in Mexico City or Guadalajara or something like that to deal with samples from Mexico. They seem like the kind of operation that has multiple labs in multiple places and deal with major multinational corporations, So.
Yeah, Chris says ALS does for sure.
Yeah. So that's what you can do. But that's also, when you're sending them a sample, try and make it as representative as possible. If you don't know any of the procedures for that, then I've got some videos on it. But basically, if you can get a big sample and crush it down and then split it into a small sample, that's probably better than just taking a small sample. And you want to take a strip across the structure, equal width, equal depth, all the way across. You're going to tend to just naturally take the best looking stuff. Try and avoid that. Try and take a representative sample of the reasonable looking stuff and go from there. And
Yeah, next time you have a day off, I want to
Oh.
go look at Michael's turquoise mines.
You got ALS and Bendigo, huh? Wow.
Do we have Michael's
Take care,
email?
Rick. Michael who?
Michael Oster.
Oster?
with the
Yeah.
turquoise mines.
Yeah, it's up a little higher there.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I'll see if I can find it and we can send him an email because next time you have a day off, I want to go look at turquoise mines.
okay, yeah, I saw it there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Michael. Yeah, I believe that's no decimal. An S. Michael MICHAEL .S.Oster@gmail.com.
Okay. I'm going to write it on the back of this.
You got it?
Michael.S.Oster
Mm-hmm.
at Gmail.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that'd be cool. Love to visit. We shall have to see. I'd say the next couple of weeks is just crazy busy. And hopefully after that I'll be pretty busy too. If things work out well, then I'll have something to keep me fairly busy this winter on a single project. And that would be great. I'd love to be back out camping and mining and, you know, even I like camping. So, anything else here? You're welcome, Alfredo. Good luck. You painted their factory, huh? Anyhow, anything else new to discuss here? Turning back into a dirty mole rat? As long as it's not a naked mole rat, we're okay.
Lucas says, thanks for all the teachings. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Lucas. I enjoy doing it. And I say
I think the 6 p.m. time works well.
okay. We seem to, you know, with Michael especially, I think we were able to actually accomplish something of some actual significance today, which is great. Yeah, I don't mind getting dirty, Chris, but I really hate getting bored. Oh, and at least this one we don't have to deal with pack rats, so I don't have to worry about hantavirus. Man, pack rat middens were something at Prospect B. It was amazing. Okay, so got 1 minute to go. If nothing else shows up, I'll call it a night.
And we'll plan for 6 p.m. next week.
Hi, Robbie. 1:45 p.m. Well, that's a nice hour. Just make sure you stake down. Dude, I have had kettle corn tents take 75-mile-an-hour winds, and we're still standing when it was over. So I know how to stake down a tent, believe me. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the wash either. I've been around the desert long enough. Thank you, Rick. Had a good time too.
Adam just got done with his studies.
Winging it, Tracy. Is that Tracy from My Break for Bad Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, it'd be interesting. I think I'll be seeing you soon. We'll try and get together here.
Mount Isa, Australia. Lots of minerals.
Yeah.
I want to see opals.
Opals.
Never mind the gold. I want to go to Australia to see opals.
Well, where was that place on the border of Montana and Idaho there that's like the opal, you know, capital of the United States or something? You know, that was Wish we weren't in such a hurry. I would have liked to have stopped.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the problems with these long trips is you're just rolling and rolling and rolling. You're welcome, winging it. Oh my goodness. All righty. Well, I think I better call it a night. Get a little something to eat and hit the bed. Rainbow Ridge, Denio. Well, Denio where? State, please. Ooh. Rick Jobling found opal in Israel. Yeah. Just being in Israel would be something, you know, history that old,
We're
etc.
aiming for 6 p.m. next week, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to go to Israel.
Yeah, we'll try and on Nevada. Yeah, we'll try again for 6 p.m. next week. It seemed to work okay this time, and it's been fun. And I always enjoy these things. So I hope everyone else did too.
If anybody has any questions, get them ready for next week.
Yeah, write them down. I can't remember anything that long. All righty, take care. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.